Hi there! Tonight's story begins over turkey and cranberry sauce. But don't let the holiday fool you. This wasn't the warm, picture-perfect Thanksgiving you see in grocery store commercials. It was the kind where secrets slip out between bites of stuffing and lies unravel with the sound of a child's voice. You may want to believe that family gatherings bring out the best in us. But sometimes they bring the truth. And the truth doesn't always say grace before dinner. So before we get cozy, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what we do here. And while you're here, leave a comment with your city and local time. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. I should have known something was off the moment I stepped through my son's front door. The house smelled like Thanksgiving turkey nutmeg, that sticky sweet undertone of canned cranberry sauce. But underneath the warmth there was something else. A tension I couldn't quite name. Brittany was the first to greet me. "Marilyn, you made it," she said, pulling me into one of those overly rehearsed hugs. Arms too wide, smile too bright, no warmth behind the eyes. I'd spent 12 Thanksgivings with Brittany since she married Lucas, and not once had I felt like she truly wanted me there. She hosted like she was filming a segment for a home decor blog, curated, polished, a little too eager to be admired. "Eli's been asking for you all morning," she added, stepping aside to let me in. That softened me. Eli was my grandson, 8 years old, all knees and curiosity, the only one in that house whose affection didn't feel conditional. "I brought the cranberry relish," I said, holding up the container. "Same recipe my mama used to make." "Lovely," Brittany replied, already turning toward the kitchen. "Just leave it on the counter." I stepped into the living room and immediately noticed the changes. New furniture, a sleek leather sectional, abstract art pieces on the walls, a chandelier above the dining table that glittered like it had something to prove. Lucas worked as a mid-level manager at an insurance company. Good pay, sure, but not chandelier money, and certainly not the kind of money that explained the designer rug I was standing on. I'd helped them out over the years, little things here and there, a check for the down payment, some money when Eli needed glasses, grocery gift cards when Lucas said they were falling behind. But as I looked around at the upscale upgrades, I felt a slow sinking suspicion. Grandma Eli's voice sliced through the air like a burst of sunlight. He barreled into me with a hug that nearly knocked the container out of my hand. "There's my favorite grandson," I grinned. "Of course, you're also my only grandson, so I guess the competition's not that stiff." Eli giggled as always. He knew the joke. We did it every time. Lucas got up from his recliner and muted the game. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Thanks for coming." There was something off in his tone. Flat, tense. He looked tired more than just work tired, the kind of tired you carry in your soul. Brittany called us to the table. It looked like a magazine spread. White tablecloth chargers under every plate cloth, napkins twisted into rings. It was beautiful, too beautiful. Nothing felt lived in. Nothing felt like home. Lucas said grace, his voice stiff as he thanked the Lord for family and blessings. Eli squirmed next to me. Brittany kept checking her phone. Lucas's hands trembled slightly. We ate in that strange silence that only families can create, where nothing is said, but everything is felt. Then, halfway through dinner, Eli looked up at me with a mouthful of mashed potatoes and said the words that stopped time. "Grandma, are you enjoying the beach house Daddy gave you?" My fork paused halfway to my mouth. I blinked. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said gently. "What house?" Eli's face lit up like he'd just told me about Santa Claus. "The beach house. The one by the ocean. Mommy said you always wanted one, so Daddy bought it for you, and now you can go there whenever you want." Across the table, Brittany went pale. Her fork clinked against her plate. She froze. "Byron, honey," she said quickly, voice a pitch higher than usual. "Why don't you tell Grandma about your art project instead?" But Eli wasn't done. It has a big deck, he said excitedly, and you can see the water from the windows. Mommy showed me pictures. There's even a place to park a boat. I looked at Lucas. His face had gone blank. His hands were motionless now, fingers tight around his napkin. That sounds beautiful, I said slowly. But sweetheart, I don't have a beach house. Yes, you do, Eli said, smiling wide. Daddy bought it for you because you're old and needed somewhere nice to live. The words hit like a slap. Old, needed somewhere nice to live. Brittany reached for her wine glass with trembling fingers. She laughed, forced, brittle. Kids and their imaginations, right? But I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at Lucas. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. Abram, I said quietly, using his full name for the first time in years. What is your son talking about? The silence was crushing. Eli, Lucas said, his voice sharp. That's enough. But I said that's enough. Eli shrank in his seat, confused and hurt. Brittany stood up abruptly. I think the pie might be burning, she said, practically fleeing to the kitchen. The clatter of cabinet doors echoed behind her. I stared at my son, my only child. The one I had raised with bedtime stories and second-hand clothes through scraped knees and spelling bees. The one I'd supported every way I knew how. And suddenly I wasn't sure I knew him at all. Son, I said, you and I need to talk. Eli, trying to be helpful, piped up. It's okay, Grandma. Even if you forgot about your beach house, Mommy says it's still yours. She says you gave it to us to take care of because you're too old to remember important stuff. My vision blurred. The room spun. Lucas shut his eyes. When he opened them again, I saw the little boy who used to run to me when he was scared. Only now I was the one who'd been hurt. Mom, he said softly, we need to talk. He came 2 days later. Saturday morning, gray skies, the kind of weather that smells like wet pavement and disappointment. I was already on my second cup of coffee when I heard the knock. I didn't jump up to answer. I waited. Let him feel it for a minute, the weight of the door, the weight of the silence. When I finally opened it, Lucas stood there, looking 10 years older than he had on Thursday. Hair uncombed, shirt wrinkled, eyes hollow. Hi, Mom, he said. I stepped aside. He walked in like a man walking into a courtroom, not his childhood home. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't offer a chair. He sat at the little round kitchen table anyway, the one he used to do his math homework on back when his biggest lie was pretending he didn't have homework. I sat across from him and waited. He cleared his throat. About what Eli said. Start with the truth, I interrupted. I already know how it ends. I just want to know how we got there. He nodded, staring into the wood grain of the table. There's no beach house, he said finally. There never was. Even though I'd known hearing him say it out loud. It landed heavy, like grief. So why does Eli think there is? He hesitated. Because Brittany told him there was. And why would she do that? Lucas took a long, shaking breath. Because for the last 3 years, she's been telling him that we've been helping you. That we bought you a beach house by the ocean. That you're living there happily, comfortable. That we take care of you. I couldn't speak. My hands folded neatly in my lap were starting to tremble. She said it would be easier for Eli to believe that he continued. Easier than explaining why you were always the one giving us money. She didn't want him to think we were struggling. She didn't want him to ask why Grandma was always bailing us out. So she lied. He nodded. And you let her. I thought it was harmless, he said, his voice breaking. Just stories to protect him. But they kept growing. Every time we asked you for help, she'd add a new detail to the fantasy. It got out of hand. How much, I asked. His brow furrowed. How much money, Lucas? He swallowed hard. About 60,000 over the past 3 years. I closed my eyes. That number, I'd known it deep down. I kept a log. Not always neat, but every check, every transfer, every story, I'd written them all down. But hearing it, seeing the admission on his face, it was something else. That was my emergency fund, I said quietly. That was my cushion. My medical money. My funeral money, if we're being blunt. I know. No, I snapped. No, you don't. Because if you knew, you wouldn't have spent it on leather sectionals and designer chandeliers. Lucas's head dropped into his hands. It wasn't supposed to be like this. That's what every man says when he gets caught. He looked up at me, eyes rimmed red. We always meant to pay you back, always intended, always planned, always hoped. I shook my head. But you didn't, and now it's gone. He nodded slowly. I'm so sorry, Mom. Sorry doesn't balance a checkbook. I stood up and walked to the kitchen window. Outside, the rain had finally started. Light drops streaked the glass like tears someone else was crying. Do you remember when I helped you buy this table? I asked. Lucas blinked, startled by the question. Yeah, I think I was 9. You saw it at the flea market and said it looked like it belonged in a storybook. You promised me you'd never spill juice on it. I turned. Then you spilled grape Kool-Aid on it that same night. I remember. I didn't yell, I said. I just cleaned it up. Because that's what mothers do. Lucas nodded. But you're not 9 anymore, Lucas. And this mess, it's not Kool-Aid. It's theft. He flinched. Did Brittany ever feel guilty? I asked. Ever stop to think what it meant for me? That I was skipping meals so your son could have another designer backpack. Lucas was quiet for a long time. She said you were doing fine. That Social Security was enough. That it's free money anyway. I stared at him. Free money. I didn't agree with her. But you let her say it, and worse, you let her spend it. He had no defense, just silence. I need you to leave, I said. Mom, I need time, I interrupted. To think, to breathe, to figure out how to move forward. And you need time to explain to your wife that her favorite charity has closed its doors for good. He stood slowly. What about Eli? What about him? He loves you. He'll be confused. I'm sure he will be, I said. But at least he won't be confused by lies anymore. Lucas moved toward the door, then paused. What are you going to do? I looked at him. I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. I stepped forward, met his eyes. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. He nodded. Then he left. I stood in the doorway long after he was gone, listening to the rain hit the pavement, my hand resting on the doorknob like it was the only thing holding me up. The sound was soft, steady, cleansing. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the napkin Lucas had left crumpled on the wood. $60,000, 3 years of lies, and a beach house that never existed. But I was still here, and for the first time in years, I was ready to fight back. I didn't sleep that night, not because of nightmares, because of math. I sat up until almost 3 a.m. with every bank statement I could dig up from the past 3 years. There were coffee rings on the printouts, crumpled receipts in a shoebox I hadn't opened since the Obama administration, and a pen that kept running out of ink like it was protesting the truth. I laid it all out on the kitchen table, line by line. Every emergency, every tearful phone call, every just this once. And one by one, the patterns came into focus like stains under a black light. $500 for Byron's emergency dental work after falling off his bike. $3,000 for a furnace breakdown in December right before they posted a beach vacation on Instagram. $800 for car repairs 2 months after Brittany got a new SUV. $200 for an allergic reaction that apparently left no medical trail. $500 for school tutoring that never existed. All of it dressed up in crisis urgency fear. They didn't just take my money, they crafted stories to make sure I couldn't say no. And it worked. I had always told myself I wasn't naive, that I saw through people, that I was the tough grandma with the soft heart, not the other way around. But sitting there in my robe highlighter in hand, I felt like I'd been walking barefoot through broken glass with my eyes closed. The lies weren't just financial, they were intimate. Every dollar came with a hug, a thank you, a new reason to pity them. I didn't want to believe they were that calculated. But they were. And what hurt the most, they'd used Eli to sell the fiction. By noon the next day, I was ready. I wasn't mad. Not exactly. What I felt was sharper than anger, cleaner, like steel, a quiet, simmering readiness. I grabbed my purse and drove to their neighborhood. I parked across the street. Didn't even bother pretending it was for anything else. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Their home was beautiful, too beautiful. The lawn had been professionally trimmed. 2 new hanging baskets with fresh flowers swung gently in the breeze. Brittany's SUV sat in the driveway, polished to a shine, and then she walked out the front door, dressed in a designer athleisure set, hairstyled, makeup done, despite it being 1 p.m. on a weekday. She carried herself like she was late for a lunch meeting at a wine bar, not scrambling to feed her family on a struggling budget. She went to the mailbox, pulled out a stack of glossy magazines and what looked like a delivery card. Then she stopped, checked her reflection in the SUV window, smoothed her hair. She didn't see me, but I saw everything. My money. In the polished car, the manicured lawn, the luxury stroller I'd once believed was a gift from her cousin. And the rage which had been buried under hurt and disbelief finally began to rise. Not the kind of rage that makes you yell, the kind that makes you plan. Back home, I pulled out the spiral notebook I used for grocery lists and crossword puzzles. I flipped to a clean page and wrote in bold letters what I'm going to do next. This wasn't about revenge, it was about dignity, about refusing to play the fool any longer. I made a list. Call Eli's school about the tutoring. Verify the furnace repair company. Contact my bank about formal documentation of all transfers. Make a copy of every check, Venmo note, Zelle transfer, and emergency memo. Speak to someone with legal knowledge just to know my rights. And finally meet with Brittany. Not Lucas, not both of them. Her, because I knew she'd never admit anything in front of him. She'd smile, deaf or deflect, hide behind her wife mask. But face to face, maybe I'd see the real Brittany. I called her that afternoon. Her voice was sugar sweet. Joyce. Oh my goodness, how are you? Abram told me you two had such a nice heart-to-heart the other day. Heart-to-heart. I nearly choked on the bile rising in my throat. We need to talk, I said. A pause. Sure, of course. What's going on? Just you and me, in person. Okay. Riverside Park, pavilion by the duck pond, 1 o'clock tomorrow. That's a little last minute. I've got a full schedule. And Byron, don't bring Eli, I said, voice sharp now. This is not a conversation for children. Another pause. Then the voice came back, slightly strained, sure. 1 o'clock. I hung up before she could recover the tone. That night I stood in the mirror and rehearsed. Not what I'd say. That would come naturally. But how I'd say it. Calm, clear, not angry, not dramatic. I'd learned something over the years. The quieter you speak, the harder people have to lean in. And Brittany was going to hear every single word. I ironed my nicest cardigan. The one with pearl buttons. The one I wore to Lucas's college graduation. A silent reminder that I hadn't always been the woman who mailed emergency checks from a crumbling kitchen. I was once someone who stood tall, who mattered. And I was about to be that woman again. Tomorrow, I'd face the woman who tried to turn my kindness into capital. Tomorrow, I'd begin the process of reclaiming everything they thought I'd never noticed they took. But tonight, I rested. Because war is best entered with a full heart, clear mind, and 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. Riverside Park was nearly empty when I arrived. A few joggers passed by in fleece-lined gear, earbuds, and eyes down. The duck pond looked cold and gray, reflecting the flat sky above. I chose a bench under the pavilion with a clear view of the parking lot. Brittany pulled in at exactly 100, just like I knew she would. She sat in her SUV for a solid 60 seconds, probably adjusting her face in the mirror, rehearsing whatever version of the truth she was planning to peddle. Then she stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, her coat cinched tight like she was about to face a firing squad. She smiled as she approached. The smile didn't touch her eyes. Joyce, she said brightly, you had me worried with that mysterious phone call. Is everything okay? I gestured to the bench. Sit down. She did, crossing her legs neatly, waiting, smiling. Tell me about the beach house, I said. Her smile twitched. Just for a second. But I saw it. Oh goodness, Byron's little story, she said with a tight laugh. Kids and their imaginations. Is that what it was? I asked, calm. Imagination. She blinked. Well,
Yes. I mean, he probably misunderstood something he overheard. You know how children can be.
I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Up came a screenshot of her Facebook post from 6 months ago. Brittany in a cocktail dress standing in front of an expensive restaurant. The caption, "Date night." Celebrating another successful month of taking care of family. So grateful for all our blessings. I turned the phone so she could see. This was the same week you told me Byron had fallen off his bike and needed emergency dental work. The same week you said you couldn't afford groceries.
Brittany's face stiffened. That's not what that post was about.
Of course not, I said, slipping the phone back into my bag. Because nothing is ever what it looks like, is it? There was a long pause. I let it stretch. Then I folded my hands neatly on the table. I know everything, Brittany.
She looked at me. Really looked. And something in her face changed.
It wasn't fear. It was calculation. Like a poker player realizing the other person wasn't bluffing. I talked to Lucas. I continued. I know about the $60,000. The fake emergencies. The lies. The beach house fantasy you've been feeding my grandson. I've gone through the bank statements. I've spoken to the school. I know there was no tutoring, no allergic reaction, no furnace repair. And I know you told Byron I was too old to remember anything. Brittany sat very still.
Then she leaned back, lips pursed. Okay, she said. You want the truth? Fine. Here it is.
Her voice changed. It dropped an octave. Cooler, sharper. Yes, I exaggerated some things, but everything I did was for the good of this family. To keep us afloat, to keep Byron from worrying, to make sure he saw you in a positive light. In a fantasy light, I corrected. In a lie. Perspective, she snapped. We were drowning. You have no idea how expensive life is with a kid these days. Do you know how much sports cost medical bills? Car maintenance. Do you know how much I live on a month? I asked. Because I do. Down to the penny, I live on Social Security and dignity, and you've been treating both like they're free refills. She scoffed. Oh, come on, you're healthy. You don't pay a mortgage. What else are you spending money on? My mouth went dry. There it was. The belief at the core of it all.
That I was old, alone, non-essential, and that anything I had left should be redirected to the next generation.
To her, I took a breath. You know what hurts most, I said quietly. Not the money, not even the lies. It's that you used Eli. You weaponized my love for my grandson. I never... Stop, just stop. I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim folder. Inside were copies of all the payments I'd made. The checks, the transfers, notes in Brittany's handwriting, text messages with requests, my own handwritten log with the dates and the reasons. I laid the folder between us. You stole from me, Brittany. And you taught Eli to believe a version of me that doesn't exist. She stared at the papers, then back at me.
What do you want? She asked finally.
I want it to stop, I said. No more money, no more stories, no more sobbing phone calls. You and Lucas will figure out your life without bleeding mine dry.
She looked stunned. You can't do that.
I already have. You're punishing Eli. I'm protecting myself, I said calmly. Something I should have done a long time ago. She stood abruptly. Abram won't let you cut us off. He's your son. And I'm his mother, not his piggy bank.
Her eyes narrowed. You'll regret this.
No, I said. You will. She turned and walked away, heels clicking on the concrete like accusations. I watched her go.
Didn't follow. Didn't flinch.
I had spent 3 years letting that woman narrate my place in the family.
But not anymore.
This story was mine now. And I was writing the next chapter myself. I expected the phone calls. What I didn't expect was how quickly they turned from pleading to pressure. That same evening, my cell phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, another. This one I recognized Lucas's work phone. I still didn't answer. I let the machine collect the fallout. The first message was Lucas, his voice strained. Mom, Brittany told me what happened at the park. I think maybe there's been some kind of misunderstanding. She's been under a lot of stress lately. Can we talk? Please. The next was Brittany herself. Joy, sweetheart, look. I know our conversation earlier got a little heated. I was surprised is all. I think if we could just sit down, you'd understand my side of things a little better. We're family. And family doesn't shut each other out over a few miscommunications. Miscommunications? They were still framing it like I was confused. Like I'd imagined the paper trail I'd laid in front of her face. Like 3 years of bleeding me dry was a quirky misunderstanding, maybe a clerical error, or a well-intentioned spreadsheet mishap. I deleted both voicemails. Then I blocked both numbers. I wasn't confused. I wasn't overreacting. I was done. Saturday morning, I heard the knock. Soft, hesitant. 2 taps, a pause, then 1 more. Lucas. Through the peephole, I saw him standing there, hair rumpled, eyes puffy. No Brittany. No Eli. Just my son. Shoulders slumped like a boy caught red-handed. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. Alone, I asked. He nodded. They're at her sister's. I stepped aside, wordless, and he walked in like a man approaching a judge, not knowing whether the sentence would be mercy or exile. He sat down at the kitchen table again. Same chair, same guilty posture. She told me what you said yesterday, he began. I meant it, he sighed. Mom, you can't seriously be thinking about calling the police. I tilted my head. Why not? Because she's my wife, and we're your family. So was your father, I said. And if he'd stolen $60,000 from his own mother, I'd have turned him in without blinking. Lucas winced. What do you want from me? I asked. To forget it. To pretend I imagined the checks, the made-up medical emergencies, the non-existent tutoring. The fact that my grandson thought I was senile and living by the sea. I want to fix it. Then tell him the truth. He looked up. Tell Eli the truth, I said again, about the money, about the lies, about how his grandma lives in a rental apartment, not some fantasy beach house. Lucas stared at his hands. He's just a kid. It'll confuse him. He's also smart and resilient. He deserves the truth. Lucas was quiet for a long time. Then she'll never agree. This isn't up for negotiation, I said. I poured myself coffee. Didn't offer him any. You know what's funny, I said? When you were 12, you stole $20 from my purse to buy Pokemon cards. He looked up startled. I remember. And what did I do? You made me return the cards, apologize to the manager, and do chores for a month to earn it back. Why? Because stealing is wrong, he said automatically. Even if it's from family, even if you really want something. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then he whispered, It wasn't supposed to be like this. But it was. Lucas rubbed his face. I thought it would stop. That eventually we'd catch up. That I'd get promoted. That we'd pay you back. But you didn't. He nodded. And now it's gone. No, I said quietly. Now it begins. He blinked. What do you mean? I'm done paying for your lifestyle, Lucas. I'm done pretending my bank account is your safety net. No more transfers. No more checks. No more text messages from Brittany about some made-up school fundraiser or emergency vet bill. I understand, he said softly. I don't think you do, I said. Because if you did, you'd be apologizing, not just for the money, but for the lies. For letting your wife turn me into a fairy tale for our grandson. For letting me walk home from Thanksgiving dinner feeling like I'd lost my mind. Lucas leaned back, exhaling slowly. What do you want me to do? Own it, I said. Tell the truth. To your wife. To your son. To yourself. And after that, I hesitated. This was the hardest part. I'd rehearsed it a dozen times in my head, but saying it out loud felt like sawing through bone. You can bring Eli to visit, I said. Once a month. Just you and him. Somewhere neutral like the library. I won't come to your house. I won't play the family game. Not anymore. Lucas looked stunned. She won't go for that. I don't care. He nodded slowly. Okay. And one more thing I added. If Brittany ever contacts me again by phone, by text, by voicemail, I will consider it harassment, and I will act accordingly.
Lucas's face crumpled. You really hate her?
I don't, I said. Hate takes energy. I'm just done.
He stood slowly like an old man.
At the door, he turned. Do you still love me? I looked at him. I do, I said. But I don't trust you. Not yet.
He nodded.
And then for the first time since this whole unraveling began, I saw him cry.
Not for pity, not for forgiveness, but because some part of him really knew what he'd allowed to happen.
He walked down the hallway and out into the wind. I stood there for a long time after the door closed. Not crying, not angry, just tired and oddly free. You'd be amazed how quiet life gets when you stop answering your phone. The day after Lucas left, I turned off my ringer. Not silenced, it turned it off completely. The landline, the cell, even the little email chime on my laptop. I needed silence. Not just from them, but from the echo chamber of guilt and noise I'd let run my life for too long. And let me tell you, silence. It was magnificent. I spent that Sunday morning doing something I hadn't done in years. I painted. I dug out the old watercolors from the back of my linen closet right behind the emergency flashlight that hadn't worked since 2012 and set them up at the kitchen table. The brushes were stiff, the palette crusted over like a forgotten promise, but I worked with what I had. I didn't paint anything specific, just color, movement, lines that didn't have to mean anything, and as the paint spread across the page, something else loosened inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the space where forgiveness might someday live. The calls kept coming, of course. At first from numbers I recognized. Then ones I didn't. Lucas, Brittany, her sister, a blocked caller that I'm 100% certain was just her using a friend's phone. I never answered. And slowly they stopped. Manipulation loses its grip when it meets a wall that won't flinch. 2 weeks later, I got a call from a number I hadn't blocked, Lucas's office line. I let it go to voicemail. Hey Mom, it's me. I just wanted to say thank you for everything. I told Eli the truth about the beach house, about the money, about what we did. He asked me if I was still your son, and I told him I hope so. Anyway, thank you. I'll bring him to the library on Saturday, if that's still okay. It was. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because Eli deserved someone who still showed up. That Saturday, I wore my nicest scarf and got to the library 15 minutes early. I'd chosen the children's reading corner, a quiet nook near the windows, with a rainbow rug and little bean bags that made getting up a mild, athletic feat. I brought a stack of picture books and a paper bag with peanut butter cookies I'd made the night before. Lucas arrived right on time holding Eli's hand. Eli ran toward me the second he saw me. "Grandma," he shouted, throwing his arms around my waist. "I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart," I whispered into his hair. "So much." Lucas stood back, giving us space. He looked different, not broken, just smaller. Like a man who was trying to take up less space while he figured out who he was without the lie. "I'll be right over there," he said quietly, pointing to a table near the window. I nodded. Eli plopped down on a beanbag, pulled a book from the stack. "Let's read this one," he said. And just like that, we were back. We read 3 books, laughed, ate cookies, talked about dinosaurs, dodgeball, and his new soccer coach, who, according to Eli, looks like a confused giraffe when he runs. Not once did he mention the beach house. Not once did he ask why we weren't at his house. Kids don't always need explanations, just consistency. After the library visit, I began to reclaim the little pieces of my life I'd handed away one emergency at a time. I joined a watercolor class at the local college. I started a walking group with 2 other women from my building, Joanne, who had an encyclopedic knowledge of true crime podcasts, and Ruth, who swore by CBD tea and still wore hot pink lipstick every day. I started buying better groceries, switched back to real butter, bought fresh fruit that didn't come in a dented can. I even subscribed to a book club delivery service just because I liked getting packages with my name on them. And every other Saturday, Lucas brought Eli to the library. It became our rhythm. No more family dinners, no more lies, just stories and cookies and time. Then one morning in mid-April, I found a pale blue envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a check for $500. And a note handwritten in shaky script, "Mom, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I want you to know we're trying. I'm trying. Love, Lucas." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deposited the check. I wasn't too proud for that. But I didn't call him, didn't text back, didn't fold the note into a keepsake box. A gesture wasn't the same as accountability. I saw Brittany again about a month later, by accident. I was checking out at the grocery store when I spotted her 3 lanes over. Her cart was piled high with generic brands. A toddler, someone else's, maybe a relative's, squirmed in the seat, and Brittany was trying to count coupons while balancing her phone between her shoulder and ear. She looked exhausted. No fake lashes, no salon blowout, no designer bag. Just a tired woman in a tired store holding on with one hand. Our eyes met for 1 second. She blinked, looked away. I didn't. Not out of spite, but because I didn't need to. She was no longer the woman who could twist me into knots with a sob story and a polite request. And I was no longer the woman who confused guilt for love. That night, I lit a candle, poured myself a glass of red wine, and painted. I didn't title this one. It was just color and motion and space. But when I was done, I looked at it and whispered the only word that mattered. Mine. Spring settled in quietly like a guest who knew not to rearrange the furniture. The days grew longer, my tulips bloomed without asking for attention, and for the first time in years, I woke up without a tightness in my chest. No financial panic. No unread messages with guilt-laced subject lines. No Brittany. Just me, my quiet apartment, and the kind of mornings that tasted like freedom. Eli and I had developed our own kind of ritual. Every other Saturday, we met at the downtown library. Lucas brought him on time every time and then disappeared to a nearby bench with a coffee and a book. I never asked what he read. I suspected it wasn't a novel, but maybe a manual. Something titled, "How to Become the Son Your Mother Used to Be Proud of." Eli never asked why we weren't back at the house with the beach view. He just accepted it the way kids do when they've learned not to ask questions that make adults lie. Instead, he brought his stories. That he made the soccer team. That his teacher called him a chatterbox with charm. That he liked his new math workbook except the fractions. And then one day he brought something else. A drawing. He pulled it out of his backpack with the sheepish pride only an 8-year-old can muster. On the page was a picture of us, me and him, sitting in beanbags at the library, surrounded by shelves of books. We were smiling, big cartoonish grins. On the back, in blocky handwriting, he'd written, "Dear Grandma, I'm glad you're happy. Love, Eli." I nearly cried right there next to the nonfiction section. Not because of sadness, but because he saw it. He saw me. Happy. 3 months passed. My watercolor class had finished its spring term. I had a stack of new paintings, some emotionally abstract, but they were mine. I'd even submitted one to the local community center's Spring Expressions Gallery. I didn't expect it to get in, but it did. It was the one I'd painted the night after Brittany walked away from our park bench standoff. A single chair, empty, on a porch, sunset behind it. I'd called it Unclaimed Seat. People liked it. One woman even asked if I took commissions. I told her no, not yet. I still painted for healing, not for hire. She said, "That's the most honest answer I've ever heard." And I believed her. Then one morning in June, I received another envelope. Same blue stationery, same careful handwriting. This time it had a return address. Inside was another check, one $200, and a letter. "Mom, we've been working on a repayment plan. I know it's late. I know it doesn't fix anything, but Brittany started a part-time job. I picked up some freelance work on weekends. We're trying. I understand if you still don't want to talk, but I wanted you to know we haven't forgotten." I haven't forgotten. Love, Lucas. I didn't cry. I didn't deposit it right away either. I left it on the table for a few days, next to the drawing Eli had made. Every time I walked past it, I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel vindication. I felt space. That was the gift silence had given me. The space to feel but not be ruled by the feeling. I eventually cashed the check, used part of it to sign up for a community garden plot. Dorothy, my watercolor friend, was delighted. She said, "Marilyn, I can already see you out there in a sun hat, judging the tomatoes." And she wasn't wrong. I judged them hard. Later that summer, Lucas showed up early for a library visit. Alone. "Eli's with Brittany," he said. "She's at work. He's at soccer camp." I raised an eyebrow. "And you're here because..." He pulled something from his bag, a folder. Inside a spreadsheet, a budget, a repayment schedule. He laid it on the table like a man surrendering a weapon. "I'm not asking for anything," he said. "Just wanted you to see we're serious." I flipped through it. Each row detailed, each note labeled, every dollar accounted for. "I even canceled our streaming subscriptions," he said with a half smile. "Eli is furious." I smiled too, a worthy sacrifice. Then I looked at him, really looked. He wasn't the same man who stood in my kitchen begging me not to press charges. He wasn't the son who had once allowed his wife to rewrite his mother's worth with dollar signs. He looked smaller, but sturdier. "You still love her?" I asked. He nodded, but differently now, more honestly, with my eyes open. "And what does she think about all this?" "She hates it," he said. "But she also hasn't asked you for money in 6 months." "Well," I said, tapping the folder, "that's the real proof of growth." He chuckled. We sat in silence for a bit, watching the kids over in the corner stack books into a leaning tower of chaos. "I miss talking to you," he said. "Like this, without it being about guilt or problems." "Me too." "You think someday we could..." I held up a hand, one step at a time. "But yes, someday." He nodded. "I'll take that." He stood to leave, then turned back. "Oh, one more thing." He pulled out a tiny wrapped box. Inside was a bracelet. Simple silver. A single charm. It read strong. I smiled as I clipped it around my wrist. For once, a gift from my son that didn't come with a string. Just a little weight that felt like truth. 6 months. That's how long it had been since the last emergency. No tearful phone calls. No mystery fevers. No Byron broke his arm falling off the monkey bars while raising money for orphans, and also the furnace exploded. Just silence. Not the aching kind, the clean kind. It's funny what happens when you stop being a resource and start being a person again. You stop hearing from people who only liked you when you were useful, and you start hearing yourself more clearly. And what I heard was peace. One afternoon in late summer, I stopped by a local bookstore and spotted a flyer taped to the window, calling all local artists, seeking submissions for our autumn showcase, Strength in Stillness. It felt like a sign. I went home, pulled out a half-finished painting I'd started back in March, right after that final teary visit from Lucas. It was a field of tall grass, waving in invisible wind, and in the middle stood a single, empty rocking chair. No one in it. No porch. Just a chair, still, grounded. I'd called it What Wasn't Said. I entered it. They accepted. At the gallery opening, I stood in the back with my coffee and tried not to hover near my own painting. But people paused in front of it, tilted their heads. One woman touched her chest. "Whoever painted this," she whispered to her friend, "knows something about letting go." I almost smiled. Almost. That fall, something shifted in my Saturdays with Eli. He stopped calling them library days and started calling them grandma days. "I like these best," he told me one weekend as we played a board game near the big sunny window. No yelling, no screens, just us. I looked at him, my sweet, observant boy. "Is there a lot of yelling at home?" He shrugged. "Sometimes. Mommy gets mad when Daddy says no about stuff." "What kind of stuff?" He hesitated, then said, "Like when she wanted new kitchen chairs, but Daddy said we needed to save." Then she didn't talk to him for 2 days. I swallowed hard. She said if you hadn't cut us off, we wouldn't have to live like this. I raised my eyebrows. "Live like what?" Eli glanced at his sneakers. "You know, Careful. I closed the game box slowly. Eli, can I tell you something? He nodded. Being careful isn't a bad thing. It's how people stay steady. Happy doesn't always need shiny things. Sometimes it just needs fewer surprises. He nodded again but didn't say anything, just leaned against me. And I understood, without him needing to say a word, that he was learning what stability felt like one Saturday at a time. In November, I received another envelope from Lucas. This one with no check, just a letter. Mom, I've officially paid back $5,700. It's still a long way from what we owe, but I'm chipping away. I wanted to let you know Brittany's looking for full-time work. It's been rough between us, but different. Realer, I think. We're in counseling. I don't know what comes next, but I'm no longer pretending we can afford to pretend. Eli's doing well. He says library days are his favorite days. I hope someday you'll forgive me, but even if you don't, I'll keep showing up. Love, Lucas. I folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer with the rest. I hadn't forgiven him yet, but I had stopped being angry, and sometimes that's the first brick on the road back. Thanksgiving came. For the first time in years, I didn't eat it at someone else's house, pretending to be thankful while my bank account quietly wept in the background. Instead, I hosted a small gathering. Joanne from the walking group brought her legendary stuffing with walnuts. Dorothy from Watercolor brought sweet potatoes topped with marshmallows and 0 apologies. Margaret from Book Club brought wine she called responsibly priced, which meant it came with a screw cap. We laughed. We didn't pray out loud, but we were all grateful. You could feel it in the way we passed the dishes slowly, in the way no one brought up politics, in the way nobody asked for money. That night, I received a text from Lucas. Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. I miss our old Thanksgivings. But I know I don't deserve to be there yet. Thank you for still being Grandma. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. December brought cold air, quiet mornings, and the arrival of a small package on my doorstep. Inside a card, a gift tag from Eli, and a necklace. Just a silver pendant engraved with one word, still. The card read, Grandma, I hope you like it. I picked the word because you're calm and strong, but also because even when things went crazy, you still came back. Love, Eli. It was the best gift I'd received in years. Not because it was beautiful, but because it was true. That night I wore the necklace, made myself a cup of tea, and pulled out a new canvas. I painted a porch again. This time the chair wasn't empty, and neither was I. Christmas came quietly. No glittering drama, no matching pajamas, no orchestrated group photos with forced smiles and coordinated mugs. Just stillness, a tiny tree from the farmer's market, and one string of warm white lights that blinked out halfway through the week and refused to cooperate. I didn't mind. Half lit was honest, and I'd come to appreciate anything that didn't pretend to be more than it was. On Christmas Eve, I made cinnamon rolls from scratch. Not because anyone was coming, just because I wanted the house to smell sweet. I set one aside in a tin for Eli. He arrived the next morning, cheeks pink from the cold, wearing a scarf far too big for him. Lucas stood behind him, holding a small thermos and 2 wrapped gifts that looked like they'd survived a rough journey. Is this okay? Lucas asked, staying on the porch. I nodded. 1 hour, just us. He handed me the gifts, kissed Eli's head, and left without lingering. Eli ran inside, arms full of joy. Merry Christmas, Grandma. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. You want cinnamon rolls or cocoa first? Both. Fair. We sat by the tiny tree. He unwrapped his gifts, first a used chapter book series I found at the thrift store, and a sketch pad with colored pencils. He beamed like I'd handed him a gold bar. Then he handed me my gift. I opened it slowly. Inside was a hand-painted rock. A small one, smooth, palm-sized. Painted light blue with a red heart in the center. Do you like it? He asked. I love it. I made it at school. They said we could give it to someone who makes us feel safe. I had to swallow twice before I could speak. Thank you, Eli. That's the best gift I could have received. We didn't need the beach house. We didn't need the chandeliers. We had this, and it was enough. After Lucas picked him up, I stood at the window and watched them drive away. He looked up once, caught my eye, and gave a short wave. I waved back. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was movement. Like the thaw before spring. You don't see the ice melt, but you notice when your boots don't crunch anymore. In January, I decided to clean out my hall closet. Not in the new year, new me kind of way. More like I'm tired of this mess kind of way. I found old journals. Unsent letters. Receipts from the year Brittany cried on the phone about having to choose between rent and diapers. The same year they posted a Disneyland trip on Instagram. I tossed the receipts, kept the journals. But in one old folder tucked behind a yellowed birthday card from Lucas, I found something else, a photo of me and Richard, taken on our anniversary decades ago. We were standing on a dock wind in our hair faces, squinting toward the sun. I looked full, present, not busy, not worn down, not worried about anyone's imaginary emergencies. Just there. I taped it to my fridge, right next to Eli's rock. 2 anchors, one past, one present. Both real. By late February, Lucas had sent 3 more payments. Small ones. $350 here, $200 there. Always with a note. No expectation, just accountability. That phrase stuck with me. He wasn't trying to buy his way back in. He was doing the quiet work of repair. And honestly, that meant more than flowers or phone calls ever could. One day he texted, "Would you ever come over again for dinner? Just you. No Brittany. Just me and Eli. I'll cook. I promise not to poison you." I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, "Maybe, one day, not yet, but I see you trying." He sent back a heart emoji and a smiley face. That was enough. In March, I started mentoring at the community center. Just once a week, helping other women, mostly older, navigate financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and the slow, sacred work of rebuilding. One of the women asked me, "How did you stop blaming yourself?" I told her the truth. I didn't. Not right away. I blamed myself for years. For not seeing it, for not asking more questions, for not putting my foot down sooner. She nodded. "So what changed?" I realized shame is just grief that's gotten stuck. She blinked. Wow. "It's not my fault I trusted people I loved," I added. "It's only my fault if I let it happen again." She wrote that down. We sat there for a moment, 2 women in folding chairs sharing pain like passing notes in church. Spring came back again, soft and slow. The daffodils out front bloomed early. The air warmed. Walter, my neighbor's lazy lab, who thinks my porch is his, resumed his weekly visits and flopped across my doormat like he paid rent. And I, for the first time in decades, felt ready. Not for revenge, not for dramatic apologies, not for grand gestures. Just ready for life, for light, for the kind of ordinary joy that doesn't need an audience. I brewed a cup of tea, pulled a fresh canvas from the corner, and as I dipped my brush into the paint, I whispered just to myself, "You made it." And I had. I didn't know it would feel like this. Not triumphant, not cinematic, just steady, soft. Like climbing a long, winding hill and finding a flat patch of grass at the top. Not a castle, not a treasure, just room to sit down and finally take a breath. It was April when I realized something simple but seismic. I didn't need an apology anymore. I'd stopped craving it. Stopped rehearsing the moment where Brittany wept, admitted everything, and begged for forgiveness in aisle 5 of the grocery store. It never came. And I stopped checking my messages like it might be waiting there. What came instead was peace, and that it turns out is more satisfying than revenge could ever hope to be. Lucas and I never went back to the way things were. But we found something better. A new version of Family One where truth wasn't optional and boundaries were non-negotiable. He kept sending the payments small, steady, not out of obligation, not even to make it right, just because it was the next right thing. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. He brought Eli by every other week now. Sometimes we went to the library, sometimes just for walks around the park or ice cream cones on the town square. One time, after a particularly bad soccer game, Eli slumped on my couch and sighed, "I'm just not good at anything." I took his hand gently and said, "Oh, honey, you're good at the best thing, trying again." He smiled just a little. "You say good stuff, Grandma." "Well, I've had practice." One Saturday afternoon, Lucas stayed behind after picking Eli up. We stood on my porch, just the two of us. The sun was setting slow. He looked down at his shoes. "I think we might be separating," he said quietly. I didn't ask why. I already knew. He'd stopped pretending. Brittany hadn't. "That's hard," I said. He nodded. "I'm scared."
"You're allowed."
He blinked. Even now, after everything. Especially now. There was a long pause. Then I said, "You're not the only one who's afraid of losing something. I spent years afraid to lose you." He looked up. "But sometimes," I added, "we lose things to find what matters. And I think you're starting to find that." He didn't cry this time. He just looked grateful and older somehow. "Thanks, Mom." "For what?" "For not giving up on me." I didn't say anything, because some moments are too full for words. In early May, I was asked to speak again, this time at the city's senior wellness fair. Nothing too formal, they said. Just share a little about boundaries, financial wisdom, surviving hard things. I stood in a borrowed blazer in front of folding chairs and coffee urns and told the story without naming names. Just the shape of it, the way betrayal can hide inside a smile, the way silence can hurt more than screaming, the way healing doesn't need to be loud to be real. And afterward, a man in the third row came up and said, "You made me feel less stupid." I told him, "That's not a small thing." He smiled. "Neither are you." Summer came fast this year. I planted herbs in window boxes, took long walks without checking my phone, started painting abstract sunsets, not because they sold well, but because I liked the way they made me feel like I was flying just a little. Lucas called one day to say he and Eli were going camping. "First time pitching a tent without Google," he said. "Pray for me." "I'll light a candle and alert the ranger," I replied. He laughed. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and stared out the window at the open sky. No regrets. No what ifs. Just this: my name is Marilyn Carter. I am 64 years old. I've been lied to, stolen from, underestimated, and dismissed. But I am still here. Still learning. Still building. Still loved. Still strong. Still. Let's slow it all down now. Let the porch creak beneath you. Let the air be still for just a minute. You've walked with me through deception, grief, confrontation, and recovery. Through bitterness and quiet breakthroughs. Through a storm that didn't end with a clap of thunder, but with the soft settling of peace. And now it's time to rest. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to carry every memory. You don't need to wait for someone to say "I'm sorry" before you begin healing. You are allowed to leave the table when respect is no longer being served. You are allowed to rewrite your story, even if it means starting from a blank page. You don't owe explanations for your boundaries. You don't need permission to protect your peace. All you need is the courage to stay rooted like that rocking chair on the porch, steady through every season. Let the picture fade now. An old photo on a fridge. A silver bracelet catching the light. A little boy's drawing taped beside a grocery list. Nothing fancy, but everything real. So rest now, friend. You made it. You are not what they took. You are what you kept. Stillness is not weakness. It is where the strongest things grow. Good night.